Hi everyone, it's been a minute. Welcome to MindAbility Matters Extra. I asked this lovely lady that you can see on your screen, Tanarra, to come on and talk to us today about what she does. I had the privilege of meeting Tanarra about a year and a half ago, I think.
Mhm. Yep.
Got on like a house on fire. She started telling me more about her mission with Rebel 75. And I'm going to let her introduce you to because she's one of these rare human beings that just sends tingles up your spine when you hear her talk. And you're just about to find out why. Tanara, why don't you introduce yourself?
That is a lovely introduction, first of all, Sam. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Hey, y'all. Have you ever considered that being human at work is an act of rebellion? I certainly did. My name is Tanara. It's nice to meet you. I live in Chicago. I have spent 30 years leading teams in a whole bunch of different industries, doing a whole lot of different things, but primarily focused on two spaces: innovation and product design, and then organizational design and leadership development. Those two things actually are really, really deeply linked when we think about our accountability, our responsibility, our creativity, our curiosity as humans, bringing things into the world, and how we actually help cultivate teams that are healthy to do that kind of work. And that's how Rebel was born. I spent some time really thinking about what I wanted to do after I left the corporate space. And so I gave myself a company for my 50th birthday. Seemed like a good idea.
I love that. One of the things that I really loved about what you're trying to do is the methodology you introduced, but also the human around it. I remember when one of the first stories you shared with me when we were started working together and really looking at, okay, how do we do this, was the time you talked about you brought your team in and you were shown an office, and that really touched me and has stayed with me for so long. I'd love for you to share that story, Tanara, because I think it would resonate with so many people.
Yeah. All right. I am 25, 26, and I'm sent into a large newspaper in Los Angeles to do a PeopleSoft implementation. This is back in the 90s. So, for those of you who don't know what that is, just head on back there. It's like your HR system, your finance system, enterprise resource planning stuff. But I'm sent there right after we acquired the company. So I worked for Tribune at the time. We had acquired Times Mirror, and my team and I were sent in to do this massive systems overhaul. We get there on day one and we're shown to this floor that is kind of a desert, like it's a wasteland. There's a pit in the middle and the offices around the sides. There's only a few people there. And we're basically told we can take any office we want, sit anywhere you want, take any office you want. We had been shown to the executive floor of a company that had just been acquired, whose leaders were in the process or had just been let go. I didn't know a lot that day, but I did know that if we sat in those offices, we were going to leave the worst first impression possible.
Mm.
And so I told my team, you'll sit anywhere on the floor, at a folding table. You will not occupy somebody's leader's office because we have to be with them when we do this work. We need to be side by side with them. It was instinct more than anything, but I knew instinctively that we were not going to set this work off in the right way and build allies and trust if we did that. And people looked at us like we were crazy. I was like, no, this folding table right here is fine. We'll sit out here in the pit, right? It was a newspaper, so big pit space. We'll sit out here in the pit. And my team was like, but the offices, I was like, absolutely not. And it took everybody a while to catch up, which is kind of a theme through my career too. And I learned after a while to like really bring people along, but it took them a minute to catch up. But once they did, they were like, oh, I get it now. I get it now. So that was kind of what it was early, obviously, in my career too, 20 some odd years later. Um, but yeah, yeah.
But it's moments like that that I think, and how you think that For me, really, it excites me when I think about you and I think
Yeah.
about Rebel 75 and some of the work that you're doing today. Let's fast forward now to where
Mhm.
you're at today.
Yeah.
What's the mission with Rebel 75 and how are you going about delivering that?
The main mission is honestly to teach people that it is okay to break norms when things are no longer serving you. Like that's, I mean, if I had to bottom line it, it's that.
Yeah.
But it's really doing that in service of us constantly being brave enough to step into spaces and help create cultures that thrive. And frankly, you don't do that in the workplace without breaking some rules. But let me be clear about this, because whenever people hear the word rebel, they go, oh, that feels really like hard, heavy, big. Rebels are really smart. They know the systems that they work within. Even rebels, based on our historical meanings of the word and the things that we struggle with, rebels are smart. They know how the system works, and you don't get to break rules until you know them, right? You don't just go about bashing things and throwing things on the floor. That's a tantrum. That's chaos.
Exactly. It's different,
Right?
right?
Different. It really is different. Rebellion in the workplace, and work needs rebels. That's our tagline, right? Work needs rebels. It needs people willing to say, I don't think this is working for
Yeah.
us, not for me, for us. And so a huge part of Rebel is also teaching people how to do this work together. And so it is approaching things like vulnerability and empathy and psychological safety in ways that we are learning how to do it. We tell leaders to do it, right? Be more empathetic, be vulnerable, create psychological safety. How? And how in the course of my everyday, not in a workshop, not in an offsite, not in the first 90 days of somebody's tenure and then never again,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Every single day. And these are things that lead us to better retention, openness, curiosity. And psych safety isn't everybody being nice. Psych safety is that person who reports to you saying, I see what you're trying to do, but I disagree with the way you're doing it. And not being afraid for their job, not being afraid of retaliation, not even being afraid that they're not valued. They know they're valued, they know why, and they know you're willing to approach change, curiosity, and shift in a very different way.
And Tanara, I think that's particularly relevant now. I've just come off, we were talking earlier about this sprint that we're doing at the moment. And as part of that, we've been offering support and really sharing that journey as to how we go about it. And we had a conversation on this last sprint where someone was saying, well, look, I've got leaders at the moment who are saying, no, we don't know where we stand in the world. We don't know if we're going to war. We're not doing anything. And I got quite emotional, actually. I got quite emotional about it because, it's very close to me. I'm with, you know,
Mm-hmm.
husband who's a vet, and we've got
Yeah.
friends who are active duty, and we've waved goodbye to them. It's very personal. But there's also a piece that I was saying about acknowledge it and ask how they are, you know, how you can best support them now. Because there's another piece here around that acknowledgement, that understanding, but also that projection piece, isn't there? And I think that's what I'm hearing so much, and I know is such a big part of what you do.
Yeah.
I love being challenged, and
But
I
a lot
don't
of people don't.
yeah, and I don't think everyone's comfortable with it. But I think that kind of conversation today is reflective of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think like one of the things that I think we have to be really honest about is that most of us see challenge as failure, right? If somebody challenges me, it means I failed. We also see failure as like sort of epic disaster. It's a moral thing for so
Mm.
many people. And a lot of people sort of glibly say, well, one of the best things you can do, one of the most vulnerable things you can do as a leader is to say, I don't know, but I'll find the answer, or I don't know, but I'm counting on you to help me. But if you've been taught that sort of in this hierarchical world of leading from a command and control perspective means you have to have the answers, then you're always going to see that as failure. But if
Yeah.
you just flip that script a little bit and say, I don't have to have the answers, I have to be accountable for our collective actions,
I
then collective action means something very different, right? Then I have to rely on you, and I have to acknowledge the thing that's in front of us and say, what does this moment need from us? Not from me, from us. And then what's my contribution to that? It's very different.
I really like that because I think, you know, that contribution is so empowering to. I think we've lost the good grace of being challenged and then being curious about it in terms of, okay, great, hadn't thought about it like that. Now explain why you think like that so I can learn something.
That last part's really powerful, right? So I can learn something. And it's an interesting moment in time, right? You're talking about the fact that, well, we may be going to war depending on where you are. That's going to hit you closer to home than not. In moments of crisis, our responses become very base level, right? Fight, flight, fawn, freeze. One of those fight moments is about ego, right? It's like, oh, no, 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 I'm right. Or I'm going to have the answer. I'm going to protect. I'm going, like, like for some of us, we draw into that. And so we don't think anybody has anything to teach us, especially folks who are younger than us or who have less experience than us in our view. And because we also don't know each other very deeply in the workplace anymore, right? We used to have long relationships, and we didn't think so much about like spending time with our colleagues and inviting them to our houses and deep, deep friendships. I mean, my mom worked in the same place for over 40 years. I remember going to the office with her and her friendships and the people she knew deeply,
Yeah.
right? And so then you know what people's lived experience is, and you tend to count that for greater value, I think, than we do sometimes now. And so that moment of like, let me understand so I can learn feels vulnerable when your ego is front and center, but it's the thing that you are placing before anything else, that need to be right, that need to hold power. And that's part of what I really want to break down with people. The power's not serving you. Give it up, distribute it. You will be so much stronger for it. Collectively, you're so much more powerful, but we like hold on so tight, especially in moments of crisis, I think.
Oh, I mean, totally, totally. The other thing I find so inspiring about the work you're doing is how you present everything in terms of just creating those habits, creating where people become that, and it's a naff way to say, and I can't think of a better way to say it, but that better version of themselves. I also know some of the great work that you've been doing. I'd love for you to share a bit more about the work you're delivering today and some of the observations that the leaders and teams have realized as a result, because it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I had the good fortune to be asked at almost the last minute to jump into a workshop with a group of leaders in a fairly sizable and really front and center in today's day and age technology company. And I won't name names because I hold confidentiality very, very dearly in my
I
work.
agree.
Um, but there were the most interesting sort of data points are, new team forming, some long tenure, some short tenure. Um, and a lot more accountability and responsibility landing on their plates. Really struggling to take the time to create a dynamic that was going to create trust and vulnerability and all of those things. Um, and one of the coolest things that happened in that room was 5 hours. So when I say this stuff doesn't have to be years and years and years of, consulting work, 5 hours. We got 8 people to do things like talk about what their work feels like and looks like from their perspective, using metaphors like describe the land that you live in, right? Describe your work as a land. What do you celebrate? What are your customs? What's your language? What do you value? What do you harvest, right? What are your crops, right? Um, what's at the borders, right? How are your borders? Are they open? Are they closed? Right? Is it hard to connect and get in? Is it easy? Is it like really porous? Those kinds of conversations unlocked then us being able to say, now if you think about yourselves as a single entity, right? You remove the
Yep.
borders, you're a single entity. Because I firmly believe that 1 + 1 = 3. That's how relationships work, right? There's you, there's me, and then there's the thing in the middle that we create. And we
Yeah.
know when it's like starving and we know when it's flourishing. Getting them to shift their mindset to, oh crap, there's not 8 people in this room. There's one team that is made up of 8 people, and we all contribute something, or we hold things back. And so we're denying our relationship, our teams, and subsequently our broader team of 23,000 people,
Yeah.
what they need from us. And they were able to identify their values, agree to a set of behaviors, not just words, but like really describe what accountability means, right? What does joy mean in our work? And just have some wonderful, like light bulb moments. And these are senior leaders. We're talking C-suite level leaders, like, bling, like, oh my God, I have been thinking about my work in one way, and you all see it a different way.
Oh,
Because
wow.
the whole point of this work is that you get to voice something and then people get to react to it and not judge it. They are literally taking it in and going, "Oh, that feels heavy," or "that feels light," or "that feels scary." Like using actual human emotions to say, "How does that feel when you hear that? What is resonating?" Because when you start to hear people react to that, you go, "Oh, I didn't realize I was perceived like that, or our team was perceived like that." So then you start to open these doors, right? And these are small moments. Like I said, 5 hours. On the end of it, we redesigned a key ritual for them, which is 90 minutes weekly that they spend together, that they were getting nothing done because they had decided it was one person's meeting. Mind you, there's 8 people.
Wow.
They decided it was one person's meeting. The meeting belonged to one person. And so simple, tiny shifts like, actually, now every month, 3 people are going to lead that meeting every week, and then you're going to hand it off. And there's specific roles. Let's be intentional about the design of this thing that allows you all to create meaning out of your work and then go back to your routines. And that I would call a ritual, right?
Yeah.
That 90 minutes is a weekly ritual that y'all have to come together, connect, create meaning, ask hard questions. And one of the leaders of the meeting is now responsible for saying, what parts of our like charter, team charter, do we want to pull on? What behaviors and values need to show up today? Because we got a couple hard things on the docket to talk about. So everybody needs to really listen. Everybody needs to be a little bit vulnerable. Everybody needs to be patient. Like, what are those things you got to pull forward? And just naming that stuff, showing up in a meeting and naming that before you even start talking, right? There's a different awareness suddenly. And so the feedback I got was, the team is showing up differently from other people, not from that team, from other people. I got, the team is showing up differently. Whatever y'all did, like, they are actively working to show up differently. They had, a couple of them had multiple hard conversations with one another post that, going, "Ooh, I learned something about you I didn't know. I've been taking it this way. I now see it this way. How do we rework the way that you and I work together?" Right? That's the power of saying, something we're doing isn't working, and I think we need some help to do it differently. You haven't failed. The failure is to continue to do what you're doing that is not working. If it's not working, say it's not working. And then
Yeah.
ask for help if you need it. That's the other piece of this puzzle. Like, I
Yes.
really wish people would stop being afraid to ask for help. Like, it's more expensive to keep doing something that is wasting time, it's wasting productivity, you're going to lose people, you're going to lose your own energy. Ask for help.
And explain when you don't understand. I remember
Yes.
over the years being in meetings where I got comfortable saying, "I'm sorry, I just don't understand what you just said to me." But that took a long time, and previously for years, I'd sit there saying, "Oh, yeah, yeah, no, I didn't have a freaking clue what someone was saying to me," but I had to make the assumption that
Yep.
I was the only one I put the pressure on myself, and I made the assumption that I was the only one in the room that actually didn't understand.
Yep.
When
One of
actually later I learned that quite a few people actually didn't understand what was going on. How expensive is that meeting?
And do you know how often that happens?
Probably.
Especially with complex terminology. That's why words like empathy and vulnerability, when people are like, well, of course. I'm like, do you actually know what it means? Do we have the same understanding of it? Because it's actually a fairly complex concept. That's why people don't have the same definition of the word love. It's
Yeah,
different for me than it is for you. Say what it means to you. Describe it so that I understand when Sam says love, she means this,
yeah,
right? But so we used to do this with executive workshops when I worked at Accenture, and it's something that's carried through my work. I would open a workshop and just say, you have a post-it note in front of you and a marker. Draw a picture of bear. I didn't say a bear. I just said bear. Somebody's going to draw a polar bear, a teddy bear, a grizzly bear, naked. That's also bear, right?
yeah,
That's a simple, we think that's a simple word. If you got 6 people in the workshop, you got probably 3 or 4 minimum different definitions, at least pictures in people's heads of what that is. Why would we assume that something that is seemingly so simple means the same thing to everybody? Clarify. My partner gave me this incredible and terrifying example of National Guard being called in to work with the police on um, sort of de-escalating a situation. And the soldiers said, all right, we'll cover you. Police said, cover us. We're going to go in and try to take care of it, but we need you to cover us. Cover for a soldier means laying down cover fire. Cover for a police officer means I'm watching your 6. I've got your back. Those are 2 remarkably different definitions of the word cover. One
well,
is active shooting. I'm laying down cover fire as I see things moving around. The other one just means watch my back and make sure I'm covered, that nobody's going to hurt me. Can you imagine what might have happened if somebody had just said, hang on, what does cover mean to you?
wow.
Let's define how, and that's an extreme example, I realize, but do you know can you imagine how many times a day we use a word that we think somebody else means and the damage it can do if you don't stop and clarify?
And it's too easy to make assumption, and I remember when I was doing the research for my book back in 2022, so it was kind of 2021 when I started to do the research, and I was looking at assumptions. And Tanarra, I'm rubbish with names, so forgive me for this, but it really the story stuck with me. And they talked about when the awful situation with Katrina happened in New Orleans, they brought in a general who had dealt with a similar situation, if my memory serves me right, in Vietnam.
Mm.
My point was, he'd had similar experience in a different territory. When he left that night, he said, the banks won't break. Based on my previous experience, the banks won't break. And of course, we all know what happened next.
Mhm.
And I think we're now in a world, and I go back to that story, and that story you've just said has sent chills through me as well, because there's so many things about the assumption what was right yesterday, or how we've been taught or trained. How is that relevant today?
Mhm.
Have we got that clarification of communication? Your point, understanding, bear. My mind went to bare trees. It started with green, green grizzly bear, brown grizzly bear, and then went to bare trees.
Mhm.
So you're right. It's when you, in your experience and with your expertise, how how complex is the fact we've now got so many generations in the workplace? Is this really any different? I go round and round with this in terms of, but I was a rebel myself in my 20s, and I didn't, I would challenge those in authority if I didn't agree with them. Have
Yeah.
we really changed?
Oh, it's such an interesting question. I think I think it is no different on one front and very different on another. So we've got 5 generations in the workplace, I think, right now.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think previous generations are any more or less tolerant necessarily than they used to be, ages ago, right? Those of us who were in our 20s, not afraid to say, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why are you doing it that way? Um, I think there are more people willing to do that, and they are less afraid to walk away than we ever were. And I think
Good.
I think it's both beautiful and terrifying, right? Because when I think about the way I was raised, I was raised to value safety and security, and you go to college, you get a good job, you stay in that job. And like I said, my mom was in the same job for over 40 years. And that's great for her. My dad was at a place for like the longest, I think, was 20 something years. The place that he retired from, right? So really long careers. I was never that person to begin with. It just wasn't me. The longest I was ever anywhere was 9 years at Accenture, and I thought I was going to be there 2 or 3. Now, I had 4 different jobs while I was there, but still, right? Still in the same, technically in
Yeah.
the same place. It's That's not how that's millennials are that bridge, right? Like Gen Z, we were probably the last ones to really be told that en masse, but
Yeah.
also to be left in this place of like, invent what's new if you think you can, right? And I think we did, like, it's kind of our generation and just before that are responsible in some ways for the internet and the digitization of the world. We were the last analog generation in any way, because by the time we were in our 20s and 30s, digital revolution was absolutely like front and center in public,
Yeah.
right? So that's why I say it's also wildly different, because you have now generations in the workplace who never knew what analog meant, who didn't have to confront change in a way that was that massive in the workplace. To them, some of this stuff is a no-brainer, where they have had to confront massive change, I think in ways we really didn't growing up, is their personal lives. So young, right? Young
Yeah.
personal lives. The, crash of the market, 20 like 2008, 2009,
Oh,
then the
yeah.
pandemic, like all of these things that have like beaten the crap out of us emotionally, mentally, physically. And they watch their parents, some of us, some slightly older, right? Bottom out emotionally, be disconnected, or be striving so hard that we were constantly working.
Oh, yeah.
And so it is a wildly different place. So I'm really encouraged by that. I think they also gave me energy and hope as a leader to be like, oh, you know what? I've got people who are willing to follow me into this madness I'm about to create. Let's go do it. Y'all with me? Let's give it a shot. I also worry about them because we still have people hanging on, because the economy is not great, because we still value, and we should, the wisdom and the knowledge of people who've been around for a long time as we begin to reinvent. But there's also a point where those people who've been around for a long time have to be willing to change, because
Yes.
their wisdom is needed, their resistance is not.
I love how you've put that. Can you share an example of how you've seen that resistance show up and how perhaps they've been able to, in their eyes, reinvent themselves because they have been shown a different path, which I think will release them?
Yeah. There's a couple I can think of, and a lot of times there's an intervening event, right? That resistance gets broken by something else. I was just sharing this story. When I was at Accenture, we had a client and their business was being significantly disrupted. So they were the only supplier of a specific book that was being ordered somewhere, and it was the print quality. It was sort of an on-demand piece, but they were a printer and they were the only supplier of this. And then suddenly the people that they were supplying were like, hey, we're shutting down this feature and we're opening it out to the public to pick whoever they want. And so if you want in on this business, you're going to have to build an app, and we'll help you. We'll give you a lot of the things that you need, but you're going to have to build an app and put it into the marketplace and be relevant.
Wow.
So these people suddenly went from being a B2B supplier, like B2B business, to B2C overnight.
Wow.
Yeah. And by overnight, I mean like, almost a year, but
Yeah.
still,
It's still quick
it's
time though, right?
really quick time. So we had this moment in a workshop with them. So we were well underway, starting to build. We were doing some testing, and we had a session with the leadership, and we said, okay, let's look at the whole ecosystem. And we had started talking about this thing as an ecosystem a long time before that, but it was the first time we were getting some of the senior leaders who'd been a little bit resistant to playing into the room. And I mean, this is a long-standing company. It's been around for a long time, and the senior leaders in the room were, and this was 6 or 7 years ago, were already like in their late 50s, heading into their 60s. And we said, okay, so what are we gonna do about customer service? Like, let's talk about the service side of the ecosystem for a minute, because the app is the app. That's fine. But, you're shifting from like a business client calling you through an account manager to Joan Smith calling you because her book's not printing the right way or she's got questions. And they said, well, we'll hire a few more people for our call center. And I just stopped and I said, hang on a second. I said, today you have 100 clients. You have more than that, but right, if you got 100 clients today, your goal, if you do this right, is to have 10x that a month from now. How are you set up to manage one-on-one account conversations, production conversations, needs questions, And it's a global offer, which means you have
Oh,
to have potentially round the clock support,
languages.
different languages, right? All of these things that, hadn't really been considered before. And he's like, we'll be fine. And I said, okay. I said, how about this? When we beta this, let's see what happens. Because you're going to put it out in limited release. Let's see what happens. He was like staunchly against this, like to the extent that we basically got into an argument, which I really generally pride myself on not doing. But I could see nobody on his team was willing to stand up and say, you are dead wrong. We're going to get screwed.
Yeah.
And the thing I said was, I respect your right to make decisions for your organization. What I don't respect is how naive you are as a senior leader of an organization that is about to have a shitstorm on your front porch. That's all I'm going to say. Your call, your company. We let it go. They went through the beta. And sure enough, it was a raging shitstorm.
Oh my days.
Like, and to the extent that the company that they were working with, right, whose content they were hoping to keep producing, was like, either you fix this or we're not going to let you launch it.
Oof.
Because it's their reputation. Ultimately, it was their reputation that was on the line too, right? So when we talk about an ecosystem, you have to remember, and this is the thing that I think a lot of leaders forget, and this is where I think where his breaking point was, he was thinking about his company and the fact that it was his decision, and he didn't want to take on more overhead. He was already building this app and investing in this thing he hadn't planned to invest in. I think he felt taken advantage of. He felt pushed up against the wall. He really didn't understand the technology side of it in the way that he needed to feel like he had all of like the cards, right? All the cards on the table. And he was having a hard time trusting anybody. And so in that moment, what do? You lean on what you know. And what you know is, well, our customer service has always been great. We're an incredible printer. We're not going to have issues, right? Didn't think about shipping logistics, like one-off things needing to be shipped out, not thousands of books that you're printing where there's a QC and you're able to check it, different mindset. And so it wasn't until his business was really threatened that he went, oh, crap. It's a whole different business model.
Yeah.
Right. And that was the piece that he hadn't considered, I don't think. Not really fully, right? You sort of know it, but it wasn't until it slapped him in the face that he was like, okay,
This is
all
getting
right,
hard now.
this is hard. I think I need help. Right. And that was that moment of like, and, he was not nice about it. It's not like he came back and was like, I'm sorry, you were right. He was like, well, this is going to, we're going to lose business. And you all have to, like, he tried to blame it on the app. He tried all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, you want the business. We've actually built you a beautiful product. You are an incredible printer. Like, let's lean into what's amazing about your business and let's capitalize on this moment to shift how you think. Right? So kicking and screaming through that resistance, but ultimately it worked and they launched an incredible experience, an incredible product, and they did pretty well with it. They eventually, I think the company was eventually sold, but it took a long time for him to come around.
And I was about to say, what was his reflections afterwards, and what did you observe as that moment in time? Because there's always a penny. I'm showing my age now. A penny drop moment, where it's not that you resign to it, but it dawned on you that actually this is a good thing. And to your point, you've got to let it go. What
Yeah.
was that moment for him?
I think it was the moment when the business was about to be taken away. And so his reflection and reaction wasn't, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and lean in. His reflection and reaction was, I'm going to trust this to other people on my team that I think know what is happening, which actually is okay. Like, I don't expect miracles from people in this work. If your reaction to this is outside my wheelhouse and beyond my capacity to learn new things whether it's quickly enough at all, not for me to say. If what you choose to do then is give it over to people who do get it and do want to lean in and are ready to take it on, as long as you don't create unnecessary friction for them when you do it, then do that. If your choice is, I just had a moment that like I missed the ball and that's on me, I own it, and I'm not the right person for this, then the people empower the people you hand it off to and say, I'm
Right.
here if you need me, right? I have knowledge over here. I'm here if you need me. When you need me, I support you, which ultimately is what he did. He said, I'm going to hand this over. And he sort of got out of the way, which I think is enough, right? That sometimes just that
Yeah.
notion that we've got to like, I'm going to create space for somebody else. That's beautiful. Like, it's beautiful. I don't expect people to become entirely new people. It's amazing when it happens, when they're like, oh my God, I have an opportunity to stretch and grow and do something new. But if your opportunity is just to take a step back and create space for somebody else, please do it with generosity, but do
Yes.
it.
I love that. Tanara, what's that one client that you've worked on that you are so proud of that transformation that you've been a part of?
Oh, so this might sound strange. I had a pair that I was coaching because I love working with individuals. I like, my passion is teams, right? And it can be a team of two. I don't care, but my passion is teams. Had a pair I was working with, and the goal really was pretty broad. They were struggling with their relationship. Their other C-suite partners were noticing, and they
Right.
basically said, we either need to do something or one of them is going to have to exit. And let's be clear, it was the CEO and somebody else. So the CEO wasn't going anywhere. And I said, okay, let's work on this. Let's do this. And I'm not going to guarantee you that he's going to stay. It's not a guarantee I can make. What I will guarantee you is that your relationship will be in a healthier place and you can make a decision from generosity and joy and respect, not from frustration and fear. And ultimately, we spent a couple months in coaching sessions and doing check-ins in between and like letting them live into some tiny experiments, tiny rebellions, little things they were able to do together. And they were showing up differently. They had amazing conversations. In the middle of it, um, the chief strategy officer shifted his role. He started doing other things that were more fruitful for him and for the company, like found a different sweet spot. A lot of little things happened that were fantastic. And in the end, he decided to leave anyway.
Wow.
Their relationship is better, a lot of mutual respect. He is in a role that he loves. There are good things happening in the organization still after he's departed. And he didn't leave in a tantrum. He didn't leave because he was pushed out. He left after sitting in the role, creating transitions for other people, creating space between like a leadership team that was leading down as opposed to like leading up. A lot of really great things happened coming out of it. And he now has a role that he adores and is going to thrive in. So it's not always about like rescuing something and keeping like, I got to keep this person. If you come at it from the space of, how do we have a healthier relationship? How is our culture a little bit healthier in here? And how do we all make spaces? How do we all make decisions from a space of like contentment and awareness, right? That are very different. I'm super proud of both of them because they worked so hard. Like they both came, they played every time we were together. They brought the honesty. They struggled. Like some of the things I ask my clients to do are not easy. They struggled openly. They said, "Ooh, I don't know about this. This feels really hard." And I said, just give it 15 minutes. Let's just try it for 15 minutes. And on the other side of it, the person who was struggling was like, oh shit, I see the value of this now. I didn't get it before, but man, I get it now. Right? Like, and I love that they were able to do that and find value in it, and they still talk about it as value added, even though they parted ways.
Oh, it goes back to that human connection and that understanding, right? And what
Mhm.
you think you've heard versus what you've actually heard.
Yep.
Tanara, when you look at, I'm going to take you forward to New Year's Eve 2025.
Mhm.
What's your hope for you and your business over the next few months?
Mm. There's a couple of really basic ones, and then there's a really big one. Um, I am still building this business, so the client pipeline needs to get richer, right? There need to be more people in it, more teams that are willing, ready to do this work. And please, proactively, if you're listening, please don't wait until you're in a crisis. I'm dealing with 3 crises right now. Please don't wait till it's crisis moment. It's not healthy. I'm also not a hero. No capes. No capes here. So a healthy client pipeline, Sam, would be incredible. I think a sense of comfort. Like, I've been working through, we talked about this, like, how do you do this? How do you market yourself in crowded fields when everybody's posting on LinkedIn all the time? And, the networking side of it, what is it that I'm really trying to do? So I shared with you earlier that I'm finally getting to a place where I feel really good about the podcast concept.
Love it.
So I would love it if, that had 2 or 3 episodes solidly out there in the world, and it helped a couple of people, right? I don't need to save the world or, help them, but a couple of people, if they're like, oh my God, this nugget was so good, and I pass this on to friends, right? Not just coworkers, but friends. Like, that would be cool. And then, like, the big one for Rebel that I didn't see coming, and I told you this, is a book showed up.
I
A
love
book
that.
showed up. Like, I didn't force it. It just showed up. Um, and I would love it if, like, the writing of that was well underway by the time I get to the new year. And I'm smart enough to know that writing too much of it without, an editor or a publisher attached to it is probably not the most incredible idea. But I also can't hold myself back because inspiration strikes when it strikes. So
I know, you're
I'm,
so driven.
I'm doing the work. Anyway,
Tanara, I love that.
yeah.
So I have 3 cookie questions for you that I ask all
Yay.
my guests.
Okay.
So the first one would be, what is your favourite cheese, please?
Oh boy. But cheese, Sam, but
Yep.
cheese. Okay. My favorite cheese. Shit, that's a hard question.
I know.
That's so rude. Um,
I'm going to go there.
the first thing that came to mind, honestly, was just like a really well done, like, double creme soft cheese. Like, I just love a spreadable, yummy, like,
Oh,
well crafted cheese. Like, it goes on everything. It goes on bread. It goes on apples.
apples.
It goes on everything, right? Like that. Like, that's, yeah.
Love that.
Hmm.
Love that. So I started off with one of the easy ones, which clearly wasn't. My next one is, over the last year, what is that film you've watched that you really feel you will never get those few moments of your life back again?
Oh, oh, the Minecraft movie. I took my
Oh,
child to see the Minecraft movie, And I love me some Jack Black and I love me some Jason Momoa. I will never, ever get those 2 hours back. And I'm mad at them for that.
I mean, I would. I hope you wrote an official letter of complaint. Just awful. Awful. My next one is a slightly tougher question, and some people have come up with the most bizarre and ingenious answers for this. I'm going to paint a picture for you. You are getting ready for your vacation and you've got all your suitcases packed. Obviously, you need to take a flotation device with you. What is that flotation device you take with you and why?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you the first thing that popped into my head because I can't help it. It's an inflatable pool unicorn. It's a giant pool floaty that's got a unicorn head and a tail.
I love
Yep.
that. I took
Yep.
those to Malta with me and I left one, I set one free. It's still out there in the pool as we speak.
Yep. I'm
love that.
taking the pool unicorn.
Love that. We've had unicorns, we've had ice cream sundaes, we've had someone who's even put an engine in it. It's incredible how complex people will get.
Wow.
I know.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to blow it up. It's all good.
Love it. Love it. Tanarra, I've always said to you, you're one of those people for me that it's been an utter privilege to work with you. It's just your mind, how you think, how you present and turn up with some of your services, to me is so advanced, and you've created something so, there's no such thing as so unique. It is unique what you've created. For anyone who is connecting with you today but doesn't know how to bring you in the organization, help them to give them some ideas as to how you can connect and what that might look like. And then I'd love for you to share how they reach out and get in touch with you.
Yeah. If you've ever been sitting in a meeting, kicking off a project, and you keep thinking, I just wish there was somebody here who could call us on our shit and do it with love. Hi, I'm your person. That's what I am. I am that person. I am your co-conspirator and co-inspirator. And Michael Bungay Stanier talks about hard change and easy change. Easy change is the stuff that like we can make a list, make a choice and do it. Hard change is the stuff that we have to experiment our way into. Experimentation requires we ask really great questions. I love questions. I am probably that person who asks why a whole bunch, and I have a whole bunch of types of why questions. And it's not because I don't believe that you know what you're doing. It's because I believe you don't know what's possible all the time if you just shift a little bit. So give me a call and we can talk and I can help you unravel it. You also don't have to have the answer when you reach out. I'll ask you enough questions that we can find an answer. We can find a way that I can support you and your team in whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Brilliant. And how does someone get in touch with you, Tanarra? What's the best way?
There's a couple ways. So my LinkedIn profile, you can always DM me. I'm there. There's a book appointment link, and there's a few things to choose from, especially based on how much time you have. Do you just need a 15-minute chat? You can grab one of those. Do you want a 45-minute intro call where you can give me all the skinny and then I can tell you what I can do? That's there too. And if you're just curious and want to kind of snoop and you're not really sure, check out rebel75.com. There's lots of information there. And there's even a couple of tools you can download. If you go to Rebel Notes, there's a few activities that are out there in the world that you can give a shot and see how it feels.
And if for any reason you've missed all of that, get in touch with me and I will connect you to Tanarra. She is someone who's going places and will do a lot to change the world of work. So Tanarra, thank you for sharing your precious time with us today and your wisdom, and for always just being such a freaking laugh when we get together. It's just, you're such a joy to have around.
Oh, thank you, Sam.
And I will find an excuse to work with you again soon. Just got to. I miss you.
Miss you too.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to us today. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you're watching on the recording and looking at bringing around change next year, do get in touch with Tanarra. She will challenge you, but she will challenge you in such a way that she will bring about permanent change. After all, none of us want to be ticking boxes. So with that, cue the music, and it's bye from both of us. Bye, everyone.
Bye.